Hello, and welcome to the second series for Pest Control Unlocked. My name is Konstantin Schwartz. I hope you had a good summer so far that's been productive and successful. The World Cup has just finished up. What a distraction that was. A great spectacle of football. Congratulations to Spain for winning the World Cup. They deserved it. They did play the better football, and overall, football won. Now, if you listened before, you know season one was built on deep dives. Four companies, one industry, looking at the numbers behind the growth. That work isn't going anywhere, but this season I want to do something very different. We've added video, as you can tell, and slides to start with. We look at events, trends, and tell you what they mean before consensus catches up with them. There are two promises about how the podcast will run. First of all, I do not intend to read news to you. You can get the news anywhere. I'm here to give you the take. Every segment ends with a call, what I think it means, sometimes a prediction, sometimes a flag I'm willing to be graded on later. The second aspect will be that the episodes will run different lengths, because some weeks everything is on fire and some weeks only one thing matters, and I'll say it in 10 minutes and let you get back to work. When a big company reports earnings, that will get its own dedicated episode, because reading a quarterly result properly deserves undivided attention. First are macro forces, forces imposed from the outside, climate, economics, demographics, and geopolitics. We don't control these, we can only see them coming. Or not. Second is around levers, the moves the industry makes on itself, the mergers, the earnings, the executive shuffles, the arguments about how we should actually do the work. These are deliberate. Somebody's pulling them, and pulling a lever tells you where they think their industry is going. And the third bit is around guardrails, regulation and standards, the constraint layer imposed from outside and shaped from within. So let's look at some of the macro factors on the horizon to influence the business. Let's start with climate. The biggest upcoming challenge will be El Nino. El Nino is no longer a forecast. It is here. June 11th, NOAA upgraded its status from an El Nino watch to an advisory, meaning the conditions are already present and expected to continue. The latest outlook gives it a 97% chance of lasting into early spring 2027, with a strong possibility that it develops into a very powerful event. For pest control, the key issue is what could be called the mild winter multiplier. When winters are warmer, more insects survive. Spring, therefore, begins with a larger starting population, especially in immature stages of the life cycle that clients are not necessarily aware of. A longer warm season gives those pests additional time to reproduce. That can mean greater pressure from overwintering insects like ticks, ants, fleas, and cockroaches. But El Nino is not one story. It is three playbooks, depending on where you are standing. Across the southern United States and the Gulf Coast, wetter conditions can increase mosquito, termite, and ant activity. Flooding can also drive rodents and cockroaches out of burrows, drains, and sewers, and into the nearest dry building. In drought-affected regions, the pressure is different. Heat and water scarcity push pests indoors in search of moisture. Termites may concentrate around plumbing, irrigation, and condensation. A late winter negative NAO tilt means that as winter ends, atmospheric pressure patterns over the North Atlantic weaken. This allows the jet stream to buckle, ushering in colder, drier air to northern Europe while dumping wetter, stormier weather on southern Europe. And to be clear, it's not something that we haven't seen before. If you want to look and consider your data that you have on your books, take a look at the season from 2015 to 2016. It'll probably give you a very strong indication as to what to expect and how to plan for upcoming events of this sort. So here's my take. El Nino does not simply mean more pests. It means the industry's traditional calendar may need revision. The familiar cycle, quiet winter, spring ramp up, summer peak, becomes less reliable. When the off-season stops, being off, scheduled service alone may no longer be enough. This could be the year continuous electronic monitoring stops being the premium upsell and becomes the baseline. Because the calendar cannot tell you when the pests are arriving, a sensor can. Let's put a pin on that. We'll come back to it later. Also, cast your minds back to season 1, deep dive into Rollins. One of the levers we flagged was their decision to carry headcount through the quiet months. This wasn't just about dodging the friction of recruitment costs. It was a deliberate move to hit the ground running the second the season turned. Let's pick up another macro factor, Let's take a look at economics and geopolitics. War with Iran has already had a significant effect on countries that rely on oil. A single fact that connects the war to your business, no matter what country you are in. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's daily oil supply. Disruption there has forced refineries to cut runs and tighten regional supply. Oil doesn't hit you once, it hits three cost lines at the same time: fuel for a route-dense fleet, the plastic in your packaging and containers, and the petrochemical feedstocks and carriers behind a lot of the chemistry used. So, a Hormuz shock isn't a fuel surcharge conversation, it's a simultaneous squeeze on fuel, packaging, and active product costs. Major forecasters have already raised core inflation outlooks, specifically citing an oil, gas, and fertilizer supply shock tied to Hormuz. An additional layer to this scenario emerged yesterday on Monday, July 20th. The Iran-aligned Houthi leaders in Yemen have declared a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia, effective immediately. Bab al-Mandab choke point is an 18-mile wide strait separating the Arabian Peninsula from the Horn of Africa, which serves as the southern maritime gateway connecting the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and the Indian Ocean. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed since late February, shutting down this choke point as well could potentially block 25% of the world's oil and gas supply. Adding this for your consideration, OECD oil inventories for 2026 are at multi-decade lows, comparing readings back to 1990 with the International Energy Agency and to 2003 with the Energy Information Administration outlook. Question this raises: when will the US stop to become a supplier of oil to other nations? And what impact would that have? This results in the volatility, with oil prices hitting highs early in the war, falling back when a ceasefire looked real, and is climbing again as the deal collapsed and the blockade returned. Let's now look at the demand side with consumer and business spending. Headline inflation has pushed to roughly 3-year high and is starting to ease again. Something like 3 in 4 consumers now expect higher gas and grocery bills. Spending is holding, but the personal savings rate has fallen to an extreme low, and wage growth is softening. Other indicators like credit card debt, mortgage failures are not looking too good either. The take here is that a pest infestation remains a non-discretionary expense, but a recurring residential prevention plan is something the squeezed householder will reconsider. On the brighter side, business investment forecasts have actually been revised up, led mostly by AI, CapEx, GDP still growing, commercial contracts, food service, multifamily, healthcare, logistics are compliance driven and therefore stickier. The take now is when fuel is this expensive, remote monitoring isn't just a tech upgrade. It's now becoming a cost control move. Let's take a look at one of the levers now, which is around management changes. At Rollins, we see the main change at CFO. A replacement has already been named, and it is an internal promotion. Ken Krause, who was CFO since 2022, resigned, and William Bill Harkins will succeed him, becoming EVP and CFO. Harkins had been Chief Accounting Officer, having joined Rollins in March of 2025, and Krause stays on in an advisory capacity through September of 2026. So there is some continuity. Market reaction is different, though. The analyst firm Bernstein downgraded Rollins to market perform from outperform and cut its target from $70 per share to $52. And Krause is resigning less than 2 weeks after presenting a gross margin expansion roadmap at the company's investor day, and is widely seen as the architect of that margin story. So analysts openly lowered their confidence in Rollins' 30 to 35% EBITDA margin on the news. This leaves the question: is Harkins the steward who executes Krause's roadmap, or does the margin ambition quietly lose its most credible champion? The upcoming earnings call may provide some of the answers. It may even be a question a Wall Street analyst may ask. At Rentokil, the biggest player in the global pest control market, just handed its 2 most important jobs to route density and integration operators, not pest people. Mike Duffy became CEO, succeeding Andy Ransom, who'd led the company for over a decade. Duffy is a U.S. citizen and is based in North America, and he came from OnTrack, a U.S. last-mile e-commerce logistics company, with prior stints at Fleet Pride, CNS Wholesale Grocers, Cardinal Health, and Gillette. Rafael Rafa Carrasco becomes CEO North America, commencing August 3, 2026, taking over from interim CEO Alain Mofoy, who stays on the North American leadership team supporting the transition through the end of 2027. Carrasco's pedigree is impressive. He came from waste management, where he was president of the Waste Management Healthcare Solutions and SVP for strategy, running 200 plus branches and over 10,000 employees across multiple countries. He led the integration of Stericycle following Waste Management's acquisition and delivering first-year cost synergies. Duffy optimizes last-mile logistics fleets. Carrasco optimizes waste collection routes and integrates multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. Neither have a chemistry or entomology background. Rentokil has decided that what ails North America isn't a pest knowledge deficit. It's an execution, route efficiency, and integration deficit. So they hired the exact skill set for that problem. Carrasco, having personally run a 7.2 billion integration, is about as loud a signal as a board can send that they intend to finally grind through the Terminix integration that's been stumbling them since 2022, and to do it on cost synergies and operational density. There's a second signal hiding in plain sight. A 100-year-old British company just put a US-based CEO in charge, pointed the whole strategy at North America, with a US activist on the board. Will the center of gravity of the world's largest pest control company now move to America? Now let's take a look at another lever, which is around mergers and acquisitions. Let me put the quarter on the board. I pulled every disclosed pest control deal from May through July. The press releases, the trade columns, and the specialist advisors like Potomac and Oz, who usually break these first. There are 13 companies because Rentokil took 2 wildlife brands in a single move, and terms disclosed on exactly 0 of them, which, if you're new to this world, isn't a secrecy. It's just how pest control does deals. Nobody prints the multiple. Now, look at who's buying, because that's the whole story. 5 of the 12 came from private equity roll-up platforms. Pesco alone did 2. Only 2 came from the public giants. Rollins did 1 small tuck-in in Pensacola, and Rentokil did 1, and it wasn't even about density. It was about buying wildlife capability. The rest were regional operators and foreign platforms. And that last category is the one I want you to notice, because alongside Anticimex, the Swedish player that's been here for years, a brand new name just showed up, Tyro Group out of Norway, buying a family pest control business in Los Angeles. It's their second US deal in 8 months. Think about what that means. The first wave of foreign money into American pest control was Anticimex and Rentokil. Tyro is the front edge of the second wave. Geographically, it's a Sunbelt story with 2 epicenters, Florida and California, 2 deals each, then Texas, Arizona, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia. 1 lonely deal up in New England, and that was the entire North. Here's the take. When you watch this industry consolidate, don't watch Rollins and Rentokil. Watch 2 things instead. Watch the PE platforms, because they're the ones actually rolling this up right now, 1 Sunbelt tuck-in at a time. And watch the passport of the buyer, because when a Norwegian firm you'd never heard of is outbidding locals for a business in Los Angeles, that tells you the whole world has now decided American pest control is one of the best recurring revenue assets on the board. The giants doing 1 deal each isn't weakness, it's discipline while they fix their own houses. The real land grab is happening at tier below the famous names, and increasingly with foreign money. If you own a good book of business in a growth metro, you're not a target someday, you're a target now, and your buyer might not even be American. The dynamics tracked today aren't isolated incidents. They are a single narrative. Climate shifts are prepping a surge in demand. More biological pressure, earlier starts, and extended seasons. Simultaneously, geopolitical friction thousands of miles away is inflating the cost lines required to service that volume. Fuel, materials, and active ingredients, all while the end consumer wallet is hitting a wall. Increased infestation, elevated operational expense, a more frugal customer base. This is the collision point for the upcoming 12 months. That summarizes the 2026-27 landscape, and it is vital to recognize how rare it is for a demand spike and a cost squeeze to arrive together. Observe the trajectory these forces dictate. Weather patterns suggest the traditional calendar is obsolete. Energy shocks make the traditional route model prohibitively expensive. They are both forcing the industry's hand toward monitoring and precision. This is the reality already in motion. The winners will be those who pivot before the numbers make it obvious. And next time, we turn the lens on the industry's own rulebook. Because integrated pest management, the framework this entire profession has operated by for decades, was written for a world without sensors, data, or real time monitoring. And it's time we asked whether the standard itself is overdue for an overhaul. If this analysis shifted your perspective, then I've done my job. And please pass this on to a colleague. I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for listening.